after 7 years of coaching, I've started to notice this pattern amongst my clients and amongst people that get stuck around 15% body fat, but they can't necessarily break through that. A lot of times they'll start off 25%. 30% body fat. They'll start their fitness journey off. They think they're doing good, and then they get stuck at that 15%. But like, why is that such a key number to get stuck at? Well, aside from a million physical factors where, it's essentially move more, eat less. I'm sure if I handcuff you to a treadmill and let you run for 24 hours, yeah, you're probably going to lose a little bit of weight in the process. I am sure if we fed you 800 calories every single day for a month straight, you're probably going to lose a lot of weight in the process, and therefore it can get past that 15% body fat. Now, obviously, I'm being sarcastic, and there's a way to sustainably go about this, but I notice more often than not that the reason people can't break through that plateau isn't always just the physical side of things. More often than not, it's actually the mental side of things, the psychological side of things, where they don't understand themselves well enough yet. Because the science is a science. There's no denying thermodynamics and calories in, calories out, all of that good stuff. But when it comes to your habits and your control and your discipline and your own reasoning with yourself, that completely changes the game on everything. And I notice the thing that holds the people back most when breaking through that 15% body fat is the fact that they think, oh, I deserve this. I deserve this reward. Because I've worked so hard, because I've put in the work and I've lost 10% body fat already, I deserve this donut. I deserve to go out and drink with my friends right now. I hit 10,000 steps yesterday. I deserve to have this drink. Why shouldn't I, right? And that's where most people get stuck because they can't break out of this cycle, this loop of experiencing some wins, but then keeping their foot on the gas. They think because they experience a little bit of winning that they are like, oh yeah, well now I can just go right back to what I was doing. And that's not the case. That's exactly how all these people are staying stuck. People will reward themselves with candy, with alcohol, with donuts and brownies, all the tasty stuff, right? And then to stack that, they'll be like, oh, well, I could take a day off from the gym. Like I went 2 or 3 days in a row. Let me take a day off right now, which is fine to some extent. But when you are reverting back to your own habits, that is when you start to screw yourself over. And I noticed that people will essentially have any excuse they can find for gluttony. Gluttony is also one of those 7 deadly sins where you don't even realize that you're engulfed by it until you've already been through it. Until you've already had that binge session, until you already ate the donuts and the cookies. You don't even realize it till after the fact, because during you're like, oh, this feels good. Like I'm craving this and now I'm going to reward myself. I'm going to find some loophole in my brain to convince myself that this is worth it and I should do this because I deserve it. I earned it. And now you're sitting there, crumbs on your lips, on your beard, and you're like, wow, I regret that. Like, why would I go for those cookies? Why would I devour a whole entire box of donuts right now? What's wrong with me? And now you're sitting in this guilt, and now you're essentially punishing yourself. You feel guilty. You feel this need to overdo it the next day. And then you start to burn out because now you're overdoing stuff. It's just something completely unsustainable. Now, the problem is when you are finding all these excuses for gluttony, you'll literally tell yourself, wow, well, I've just had a really long, stressful day at work today. Let me relax. Let me have some of my comfort foods. I've heard that one a lot. Comfort foods? Really? Let me just have some of my comfort foods. It just makes me feel good. It takes my brain off the stress. Let me, I just had a long day. I'm extra tired today. Maybe I could just revitalize myself with something good, something tasty. That's the whole point, is that you've been doing that for 10, 15, 20 years. You haven't been able to break through that cycle yet. You haven't been able to pull yourself out of it yet. And that's why you're still stuck. And that's why you are getting frustrated at yourself for not being able to get below 15% body fat. For every day and every week that you do something good, you're spending another 1 to 2 weeks trying to convince yourself of all these things of why it is okay to quit on your nutrition and why you don't have to hit your protein today. And if you got steps in yesterday, I could just let me do half today. No, you have to keep your foot on the gas. You have to keep pushing. That is how you actually get the results that you are looking for. That is how you break past that 15% body fat and truly get lean. A lot of times people will say, well, coach, like, I'm just looking for balance. I just want a balanced approach. And so I ask them, I'm like, okay, cool. So, what have you been doing for the past 10 years exactly? Have you been working out every once in a while? Have you been walking? Are you eating, a few hundred grams of vegetables and fruits every single day? What kind of balance are you talking about? And they're like, well, I haven't been into the gym probably like, 7 years, maybe 8 years. And I try to eat healthy every once in a while, but I usually kind of fall off because it gets a little strict. And I start to, I like to ask questions before I just assume things. And after asking a handful of questions, I realize you're talking about balance. You have no balance. You have not balanced health. You have not balanced fitness. You have not balanced any of this into your lifestyle. So what makes you think you have already earned your balance when it comes to having more alcohol, having more sweets, and you haven't even dialed in, you haven't even had a vegetable, you haven't had a carrot, you haven't had any of these things in years. And you're talking about, well, I ate healthy yesterday, so let me just go right back to what I was doing today. You think that's going to work? It took you 10 years, 20 years to fall out of shape. Some of my clients, it's taken them 40 years to fall out of shape before they realize, oh my gosh, I need to get my health together. I need to get my crap together. And then they realize, oh yeah, this is a lot harder than I remember. Since when I was a teenager, when I was in college, even when I was in my 20s, I realized, wow, I used to be pretty easy back then. And it's like, yeah, well, when you don't spend 40 years falling out of shape, it is easier. Now you can't expect the same results 2 weeks in, 2 months in, sometimes even 2 years into your fitness journey that you had when you were a kid or in your 20s. You can't experience and assume that you're just going to get those results right back because you're trying to undo 40 years, 30 years, 20 years, multiple decades of not being balanced, of not paying attention to your health, of not caring about what do you look like, and you just woke up one day and you realize, oh my gosh, it's like what? Yeah, I just kind of got fat out of nowhere. What happened? Like I had no idea how that happened. It just kind of popped up overnight. That's what a lot of these prospects and a lot of my clients will say to me. They just didn't realize that it snuck up on them. And then they get shocked when they realize, oh my gosh, I have to put so much extra effort in just to get back to a decent percentage of body fat and decent health. You have to remember that your balance comes after the results, not during. Once you actually achieve your goals, once you are in a healthy state, a healthy body, you can do day-to-day tasks without sucking wind, like going up a flight of stairs, tying your shoes, having the flexibility, the mobility to actually lean down and tie your shoes. A lot of these things people lack on just day-to-day tasks. Getting out of a chair without holding on to something or pressing up off of your legs. Things like that. People don't even realize that they're struggling with those until it comes to the forefront of their mind. Or they just deny it long enough to where they don't even care. And then when they do get to a point where it actually matters and is starting to impact their health and their memories that they're creating with their families, they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, this sucks. I don't ever want this to happen again. Now, the thing to keep in mind when it comes to balance is that if you've already lost 10% body fat, 15% body fat. For some people I know that I've coached, 20% body fat. If you already lost that crazy amount of weight, then you might convince yourself, okay, I think I'm ready for that balance. That is actually okay. There is a certain starting point that each and every single person has, and each of us are going to be starting off in different head spaces. We're going to be starting off in different bodies, different percentage of body fat. We're going to be starting off with different goals, different reasons for our goals. Some people would just want to look aesthetic and they want to look good on the beach. Other people, they just want to be in a healthy body. They want to do this for themselves. There is a combination of reasons on why everybody starts, but sometimes the results can be very similar or the exact same. Now, if you believe you already have that balance and you want to start living a more balanced lifestyle because you've lost, 20% body fat, totally okay. I am actually not opposed to that. The problem is when you start to assume that because you've lost all this weight and now you practice balance and now you're getting frustrated with not being able to break past that 15%, that's where the problem is. When you start to get frustrated, when you start to realize, like, how come I'm not losing fat anymore? How come I'm not losing weight anymore? It's because your expectations are blown out of proportion. What you had to do to get from 30% body fat to 25% body fat is going to be a lot different than what it looks like to get from 15% body fat even down to 12% body fat. Because mentally, it starts to become easier. Because as you get past 20% and as you approach 15% body fat, your whole identity is changing. Fitness is part of your lifestyle. You developed a lot of these habits along the way. You don't feel like that barrier of entry is nearly as tough to actually start eating healthy, eating whole foods, not reaching and grabbing for snacks 9 out of 10 times. It starts to become easier mentally because it's just who you're becoming and it's the habits you developed along the way. However, it becomes harder physically to actually see those results. I like to describe it like this. Imagine you're brand new to your fitness journey. You're trying to lose fat. You're trying to build muscle. You're trying to lean out. You just have to essentially take one little baby step over a tiny wall, like a 1-inch tall wall, and all of a sudden you see results. Oh my gosh, getting a little bit stronger in the gym. Oh, wow, I already lost a couple of pounds. Where most people don't realize is that physically, every time you start to get better, every time you start to get stronger, every time you start to lose more weight, it starts to become harder and harder. That wall that was 1 inch tall continues to grow and grow and grow. And as you push your body to lower percentages of body fat, and as you develop strength in the gym, you start to realize, dang, it's kind of hard to just lose 10 pounds now. It's kind of hard to lift a little bit heavier on these bicep curls now. You start to realize that, oh my gosh, if I were just progressing linearly like this the entire time, we would all be benching thousands of pounds, and we would all be like 10 pounds by now if we could just lose, 10, 20, 15 pounds throughout, a month, 2 months, that sort of thing. We would all just be progressing so easily, so rapidly. But that's not the case. When you first start out, it is so much harder mentally, but it is so much easier physically. And vice versa as you get to higher and higher levels, where it becomes easier mentally, but it becomes harder physically, to the point where you're like, okay, this wall is like up to my chin. I gotta like push myself over this wall to actually see some sort of results, get some sort of stimulus from this workout, get some sort of actual extra poundage off of me at 15% body fat versus 35% body fat. And then eventually, as you get to 12%, 10% body fat, you realize, oh my gosh, this thing is set way up here. I need to grab a ladder to get over this wall now. I need to do way more than what I did when I first started. So that's a little bit of a catch-22 there, where a lot of people don't realize this. And they think that because they reach that 15% body fat, they're ready for balance. But that's not always the case. They believe they're ready for balance, but then typically if you're someone who's lost 10%, 20% body fat, you are much more of a high achiever than you probably think, to where you're like, yeah, I want to keep going. I want to keep progressing. Progressing is literally one of the best ways, one of the best feelings that we can have as humans, is making sure we are feeling progress. We are seeing progress. And so when you stall at 15% body fat, you're like, oh my gosh, you're like, this sucks. Like, I want to keep going. I want to keep getting better. I want to keep leaning out. People are talking to me differently. I have different kind of energy. I could just do more stuff with my life. And that's the part that people are missing. They'll say, wow, well, I deserve this because I put all this work in. And then they think, yeah, well, I deserve this. I'm going to practice this balance. And then they revert back to their old ways. And then they start to go backwards in their progress because there is no balance. They go right back to how they were 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So if you can keep that in mind, where you try not to find excuses and loopholes for yourself to be rewarded with bad food and with laziness, gluttony, all these things that have been hindering you in the past. If you can find a way for you not to fall into that trap, you're going to be so far ahead of the game and so far ahead of everybody else. But this is most of the time, this is the reason people cannot break through to that 15% and below body fat. If you are stuck at this 15% body fat and you haven't been able to break through, there's a coaching application in my description down below. It's a one-on-one coaching application. Feel free to fill it out. Let me know what you're struggling with, where you're stuck, and then what you're trying to achieve. And that way I'll reach out to you. I'll see what I can do for you, and we'll go from there. Okay. In the meantime, if you found any value in this video, if you feel like you can relate to this at all, please be sure to drop a like down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.